Good evening. Welcome to the public hearing to accept a gift from Best Buy to Merrimack High School in the amount of $9,000. I'd like to introduce Peter Bergeron and Christopher Petrovich. And is Marge Petrovich also joining? More than welcome if you're all good? Great. Welcome. It's all yours.
Well, thank you for inviting us. First of all, before we begin, and our presentation will be brief. This past weekend, or I should say Friday, I had one of the students. We have a couple of the students here this evening. One of them came into my office and handed me a shirt, and I opened it up, and you know, time flies. But the U.S. First robotics program started. At Merrimack High School in 1995. So I know, I'm not sure, but I would tell you this, that Christopher Petrovic and his wife Marjorie have been involved with the program for many years, and without their support, commitment, and dedication, you know, this program would not be what it is today. So, you know, I just like to personally thank them, and I know there'd be many people behind me thanking them as well. And they have served this community of Merrimack High School very well in regards to you know, getting our students into different fields and moving them in different directions that they never thought that they could go without, you know, their expertise and guidance. So I'd just like to, you know, talk about that or mention that first. As far as this grant from Best Buy in the amount of $9,000, it came as a result of Mr. Petrovic's son, Daniel, who at the time, who's a Merrimack High School graduate, who at the time was an employee at the Best Buy in the Mall of New Hampshire. So the grant we received was from the Best Buy Foundation. This grant is awarded from the Community Grants Program. It is in partnership with our local Best Buy store. This is to support programs that give teenagers access to opportunities through technology. Purpose of the grant, obviously, is to be used by our U.S. First Robotics team, Chop Shop 166, to purchase supplies and equipment that will be used and utilized in preparing the team's robot for competition. The U.S. First offers our students a wide variety of experience, especially in the area of hands-on experience. There are some restrictions to the grant. First of all, we have to expend all the funds over this year, which I don't think we'll have any difficulty at all doing that. And Best Buy would require a report detailing how the funds were used, and also if there were any unspent funds that would require a discussion with the foundation staff. These funds cannot be used at a Best Buy store, and there are no reoccurring costs associated with the grant. So I'm not sure if Chris would like to add any words about that grant.
Well, when we received the grant, the first thing we thought about was how to make the grant last a long time. So we thought about what to purchase with it, and we've outlined several pieces of equipment. It's basically capital equipment. We're going to have it for today and for the future. It's our desire to introduce more students to hands-on fabrication, design, all of the things that you need to know to get a robot out the door in 6 weeks. We really didn't want to buy t-shirts. We really didn't want to use it to pay for travel. Those are things that they're consumables in my book. So these are going to be in the high school for this year and for years to come. And that's all I have to say.
We certainly would entertain any questions you have for us.
Are there any questions from the public relating to this gift? Seeing none, may I please have a motion to close the public hearing? Is there a second? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? and abstentions. So the motion carries 3-0-0. So at this time, we will recess until our 7:30 meeting, which is in about 8 minutes. And further on the agenda this evening, we will be discussing as a board your presentation and your request, and we will be voting later tonight on that. So we thank you so much. We thank you always, Mr. and Mrs. Petrovich, and your team for all that you do to represent Merrimack High School, and honestly, the community in Merrimack, because we see the chop shop all over town. I'm actually on the Parks and Rec committee as the school board delegate, but our Parks and Rec chair is actually here as a delegate of the New Hampshire House of Representatives, and we really do see you out and about in our community and at our events, and your haunted house is second to none, so thank you every year for doing that as well. So again, thank you very much, and we will be discussing this later this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, and welcome to the February 16th, 2015 Merrimack School Board meeting. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. The second agenda item that was on our agenda for this evening is the approval of the February 4th, 2015 minutes. Based on the initial draft and some of the material areas of the meeting that were not included in the draft minutes, we're going to be tabling item number 2 until our next meeting, which is on March 2nd. That leads us to public participation. Members of the public are invited to come to the microphone, state your name and address for the record, and address the board. Is there anyone from the public who would like to address the board this evening? Seeing none, we will move on to item number 4, which is the acceptance of gifts and grants under $5,000. Matt Chavanel.
Thank you very much. This evening we have from the Health Trust to the district a gift of $1,000. This gift was received by the Healthcare Cost Containment Committee. You've heard us talk about that committee before, that gets together and looks at ways to minimize cost and promote wellness, and will be used for work site health and safety activities to benefit the district employees. The only requirement was that Christine Susi, classroom teacher at Thornton's Ferry and a member of the Health Cost Containment Committee, was required to attend a full-day training session. So the amount is $1,000. It is from the Health Trust, and it will be overseen by the Healthcare Costs Containment Committee.
And thank you, Matt. May I have a motion to approve the gifts and grants under $5,000? Made by Andy Schneider. Do I have a second? Seconded by Cindy Guglielmi. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Those opposed? Abstentions? And the motion carries 4-0-0. On to item number 5 is the board's response to the acceptance and expenditure of gifts and grants over $5,000. If I could invite Peter Bergeron back up to the microphone. Thank you. At our public hearing a few minutes before our meeting started, we got a presentation about a grant proposed to us from Best Buy in the amount of $9,000 for Merrimack High School to go toward their Chop Shop team, which is the FIRST Robotics group. Are there any questions regarding the grant that we have at this time? Mr. Schneider.
Yeah, Chris alluded to wanting to use the grant more in a long term as opposed to something that was like expendable or consumable, I believe the word he used. Has there been any planning or sort of discussion of the kind of things you want to use this for? I know he wanted to do it to get more kids involved into the process of building things. Has there been any talk about the kind of things or just a general direction?
Well, first of all, I think you had mentioned about getting more students involved, and I think that's the goal every year. And that can fluctuate, but typically, we may have upwards to 50 students in the U.S. First Robotics team as far as different items that they would like to purchase. Primarily items to get the robot ready. I wish he was here. He's the guy to speak to that. But I know computer software, things of that nature. In certain machines, which over the years we utilize our own machines within the wood shop or auto body shop, and we have certain machines that would take care of a lot of that. But there are certain items that he would like to get, but the team would like to purchase, but sometimes the expense is cost prohibitive. But as always, they look to the community and they come together and they are able to work together on that.
Well, my question is more along the lines of, did they anticipate using things that would be directly related to the first activity that particular year, or maybe something auxiliary to get more kids to sort of train them, get them involved with stuff so that maybe freshmen got involved more, to get their feet wet, so to speak, so that they could get more actively involved as they went along?
I think more for the items that this grant would be used for this year specifically.
Okay.
And once again, it fluctuates, from year to year. Some years we have a very active freshman class. We have, more so than, other years. And, sometimes those freshmen come in and they are sustained through, their senior year.
Okay, thanks.
Are there any other questions from the board this time? That being said, I'd like to entertain, does anyone have a motion to accept the gift of $9,000 from Best Buy to Merrimack High School for the FIRST Robotics team? Moved by Cinda Gualiumi. Do I have a second? Seconded by Andy Schneider. Would you like to speak to your motion, Cinda?
I move that we accept the gift with our gratitude. Thank you.
Are there any other comments? That being said, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Abstentions? One abstention from Davis Powell. So the motion carries 3-0-1. Thank you, Peter.
And just a closing comment. You can look at U.S. First Robotics very much what athletic teams, when you look at, student athletes who participate in lacrosse, be it hockey, basketball. At one time, it was just the season. But now, in this age, you don't have a lot of three-sport athletes. They may participate in one sport all year and work on their skills throughout the year. And it's very serious business. I can remember a time when U.S. First Robotics, it was just a season. It was like a 6-week build, and that was it. The students who were involved in U.S. First Robotics certainly do other activities as well, but those adults are involved in the U.S. First Robotics, our Chop Shop, Team 166, all year. I mean, they're busy throughout the year. So, you know, when I came up and mentioned, you know, my gratitude toward the Petrovics, you know, I really do feel that, you know, we're successful as a school because of the Petrovics in, you know, also bringing other community members into the program each and every year.
Yes, and you mentioned during the public hearing as well, this is their 20th anniversary, which is very exciting for
Yes.
this district. So it's a long-standing tradition in this area, and I'm glad Best Buy recognizes a good resource in for their foundation.
Thanks.
So thank you very much, Peter, and thanks for staying for the meeting. We're moving on to item number 7, which is technology in the classroom. The topic tonight is, oops, sorry, number 6. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. The discussion of legislative issues. We have the members of our Merrimack delegation to the New Hampshire House of Representatives. If you'd like to come up to the table at this time. And it looks like we have 3 tonight.
It looks like there's only 3 out of 8.
So.
Oh, okay.
Thank you for inviting us. Just a second to organize here.
Quite all right, Chris. While we're at it, we do have 8 members of our delegation. We do have 3 tonight, but they are available to us and have been to our board a number of times to keep us up to date on the issues in Concord that affect the school district here in Merrimack, and we thank you for taking the time out of your schedules to be here tonight. That being said, Chris, if you'd like to introduce your colleagues, and then we'll get started. Thank you.
I will do that. As you mentioned, there are 8 representatives. Thank you all for inviting us. Alphabetically, Jack Balcom, who is here, and he's on my right. And Jack is the vice chair of the Education Committee, which is the focus of our discussion tonight. Dick Barry. I'm Chris Christensen. Dick Hinch. Josh Moore, who's here, on my right. Janine Notter, Tony Pellegrino, and Phil Strait. And I think we're going to go straight into some of the bills that Jack had already mentioned to the administration in terms of, I think, getting into your packet. So I'm going to just let Jack.
Thank you.
Okay.
And
Go
Jack,
for it.
am I right that Josh Moore is also on the Education Committee as an at-large member?
You just stole my thunder.
I'm sorry, but
Yes.
you can keep
Merrimack
going.
has 2 votes on the House Education Committee. Josh Moore and myself. I'm the vice chairman, and I normally take over chairing duties because our chair is either snowbound up in Haverhill, New Hampshire, or he's introducing the bills. There's a couple of things going on here. We've got a lot of bills that are finally coming to the floor this week, and I also put out copies of 5 bills that I thought you might be interested in. Right now, we're getting about 40 bills to our committee a week, so that gives you an idea of the volume. So to pick out stuff like this is, you know, I really cherry-picked some of the things I thought that you would be most interested in. On the floor this week, I'm introducing a bill in front of the full House, and that's to lift the 6-year moratorium on the state building fund, the school building fund, and that is ought to pass with amendment. So that's the recommendation from the committee, and that's very favorable. We'll see what happens to that. It was 19-0 out of the committee, and this is long overdue. Another thing that's coming to the House floor is establishing the position of a statewide school nurse. This had a fiscal note attached to it of only $93,000, and the committee was mixed on this, and it's going to come to the full House. Inexpedient to legislate. They thought that this job was already being done, and that training was already being done statewide for the school nurses. So we'll see what happens there. Okay, I'd like to go right into the 5 bills that I presented to you, because there's a theme here that I really don't want you to lose sight of, and the theme here is that we're trying to localize control, take control from the State Board of Education and make sure that it's firmly within the hands of you, the school board members, who know what's best, what to do on your own school district level. And you have the experts over here. I forgot to say for the record, I'm Jack Balcom. Thank you so much, Madam Chair, for inviting us, and I feel like I know most of the people up here. It's kind of like being home. If I get too comfortable, shake me up.
I believe you're a veteran of this side of the table as well, so.
Well, that was one of the qualifications I put down to get myself the credentials for being vice chair. And most of the people that are on the school board committee, I'm on the House Education Committee, are former school board members. Most of us are former teachers, and certainly I would say a good portion of us have masters in education. So given that, we have a very homogeneous, very bipartisan committee, and we're really trying to do the job to prepare New Hampshire's workforce for the college and workforce tasks that they're going to be facing when they graduate from the 12th grade. The first bill that I gave you is House Bill number 116. This is an interesting bill. I get about 20 emails a day on this. It's fundamental because it returns a little bit of power back down to the school boards. One of the reps presented a bill to change the tenuring of a teacher from 5 years down to 3 years. Now, this might not seem like a big thing. There's also a second part of it that actually allows the teacher to be tenured after just 2 years in a district. And the teachers are very happy to see this. They're very supportive of it. However, the representative from the school boards and the school administration came out very strongly against it in the public hearing. Okay, it's going to be coming before the committee tomorrow for an executive vote by the committee. And what's important on this bill, not to lose the slant of it, is that it's not the matter of whether the tenure is going to be 5 years or 3 years, but it's bringing that control over holding teachers responsible down to the school board level. And on the other side of the coin, in discussion, it was also presented that it's the fundamental task of the local school district to make sure that teachers are evaluated frequently and that they are getting the proper training. Because the bottom line is that you want to put the best teacher possible into that classroom and to have the best teacher possible teaching our children. And so that's the nuance of the bill. So on face value, it's a matter of trying to change the tenure. What we felt on the committee that it was actually a matter of local control. So you'll see what happens tomorrow. I'll let Marge know, or Superintendent Chaffrey know, that what happens in committee tomorrow. The next bill that I put up there was House Bill 471. Okay, this is
Jack?
Yes.
Would you prefer that we ask questions as the bills get discussed,
Oh.
or would you prefer that we wait till the end for your edification?
Well, okay, it doesn't really matter to me. If you have questions right now, that's fine.
It sounds like we might. That's why I'm asking. Are there questions from the board on the first bills discussed? Mr. Powell.
Thank you all for coming tonight. Mr. Balcom, I just have a couple questions on 116. You mentioned that by changing the tenure from 5 years back down to 3, your committee feels that it would bring control back to the local level. How do you see that?
Well, it brings the decision back for this kind of a general hearing and a tenure, if you will, back down from us dictating it up at the state level down to 5 years, which gives you more flexibility here at the local level. Now, there's other nuances that came out in the hearing. We had testimony from the American Federation of Teachers and NEA. They were supporting the bill, but upon testimony, it was brought out that yes, because of the collective bargaining, the teachers actually had a lot of these protections already in place. Tenure, I give you a history of tenure. It appears that tenure was really brought into the educational community to protect teachers. This was prior to collective bargaining. There's a lot more in place right now to protect a teacher from indiscriminately being fired, if you will. There was a lot of discussion that some school districts may not evaluate a teacher for 5 years or 3 years. This we found very hard to believe. So there was a lot of things that was brought out in testimony, but basically that's the answer to your question, is that rather than us dictating it to you, you have more flexibility on this level.
Well, if that's the case, why not make it 0 years if you're trying to give control back? Because I feel like you're still dictating to us, okay, you can only do it 10 years at 3 years.
Yeah, 5 years is the one that's in place right now.
Oh, I understand that.
Personally, at this point, I feel that that might be something that would be best also controlled. What protections are you going to afford the teachers on this level outside of the collective bargaining contract? And to me, I trust the school board, I trust the administration to be able to come up with a reasonable plan. However, that 5 years is in place, and it wasn't within the purview of the bill to change that 5 years. Does that answer your question,
No,
Dave?
it doesn't, because if I'm reading the bill correctly, you're changing it from 5 years down to 3 years, back down to 3 years.
So that was the intention of the bill.
Right.
The testimony from the School Boards Association and from the school administrations was not to support this bill, and my guess it's probably going to be an expedient to legislate.
Okay, so how is it going to, you said it's being voted on executive committee tomorrow, correct?
Right.
It has 5 years or has 3 years?
Well, the bill as it's presented right there, which would change it from 5 years to 3 years, and in some cases 2 years.
Okay.
Okay.
I know we're not prepared to take a position on this as a board, but I can tell you personally, I think it's a mistake to bring it back down to 3 years. And the reason for that is 5 years gives us a longer window to evaluate a probationary teacher. And it's worked well since it's been in place. And as I'm sure you're aware of, we have spent the last, almost 3 years, Mark, working on a new educator evaluation piece that addresses this very thing. So you know how Merrimack is. We're always on the leading edge, or we like to think we're on the leading edge of everything, and we're going to come up with the best product available. As a matter of fact, I know the assistant superintendent has been contacted early in the process that other districts are interested in what we've come up with, and they want to look at it. So my personal opinion, when it goes to vote tomorrow, I hope that it is an expedient to legislate, because I would like to see it stay at 5 years, to be perfectly honest with you. So that's all I have to say about this one.
Okay, thank you for your input.
Sorry, I'm just keeping my mic off. Matt, you had a question as well, or a comment?
Yeah, I just had a comment. It's probably not the most popular audience to bring this comment forward, but we've been lobbying to have the tenure bill changed from 3 to 5 for quite a number of years now, for the purposes of what Mr. Powell, Board Member Powell, stated, to give us a longer evaluation period for teachers, and to bring it back to 3 is a step backwards in our mind. The 5 years gives us the window to observe, to help, to modify, to allow for growth, and it just seems more reasonable than a 3-year period, and then you have to make a decision to fish or cut bait. So I would personally support a 5-year period as we have tried to get that legislation passed and inactive for quite a long time. So, just my opinion.
Thank you.
Are there any questions or comments from the board regarding House Bill 116? I actually wanted to go backwards since we are getting further in the thing, in the packet, and you kind of highlighted, but that's not in our packet, about lifting the moratorium on the school building fund. Can you provide additional details? Although I know it was 19-0 in favor of lifting the moratorium, but can you talk about what opportunity that brings back to school districts as they're looking to build new buildings versus looking to fund existing buildings that have promises to fund, those kind of things?
Okay, I don't want to take up too much time. I didn't really want this to turn into a hearing, but basically the school building fund statewide, it was to help communities afford to rehab buildings that they had that are very old. The average age of a school building in New Hampshire is around 50 years old. Also to help communities establish new construction. Now this is not, giving communities the money. It's a small portion of the building fund. It's a matter of lending, in some cases lending the money, backing the credit rating to borrow the money for a bond. But for the most part, it brings money back into the system. Some of the money is a giveaway. But at $50 million set as the minimum bar for supporting this particular fund that's been closed for business for 6 years, if you will, we consider that there's about 10 years worth of backlog in communities that have gone on and actually done the building construction because they had to. Communities like Bedford, they had to build a new school. But at least this would put the money back into the system. Now it's quite complicated what the formulas are. I don't happen to have that in front of me right now, but it's a start in the right direction to support communities in their building funds and their rehab. Chris, do you have anything more to say about that? No. Okay.
And honestly, for us, it's just been such a hot button item. We have obviously a middle school that we built about 10 years ago. And, we have this SAU SPED building, which we've been talking about longer than I'd like to say. But it's, when you talk about building aid and potential for the district to have opportunity for funding, that's something we have to keep an eye on as a board. So that's a hot button item for us. So I hope we don't have that kind of, discussion everything, but building aid is a big deal for this board and this district. And I think, Matt, did you have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a statement that everything that we have constructed before the moratorium on building aid is being honored by the state. So the 30% from the principal payments that we're paying on our current bonds are still getting paid for by the state. That's still in practice. Talking about new construction going forward, that's the message here. And from what I hear, because the first thing when I heard about it, I asked a question about central office, because he used to get reimbursed 40% on central office buildings. And the answer I heard initially from the building department at the state was there would be no money for central offices.
And obviously what we're looking at would also have special education facilities for testing, for evaluated, for meeting. And so, is there potential opportunity because of the functionality of that within a facility? So for us, it's going to be an item we're going to ask you to keep us abreast of because it is such a hot button item for this board right now. And whatever information you have about that building, it is definitely pertinent for our discussions going forward. So we appreciate whatever you can provide us on that.
Okay, I'm hopeful with a 19-0 out of committee that we can turn the House around on this one. It was not initially a welcome bill because $50 million was a large ticket number to come up with, but they're making room for it.
Excellent. And I think your next bill, unless there are any questions about building aid since I brought it up. Okay. Going on, I think your next bill is 276.
Yeah, that was a great segue you had, because 276 is really a hot button issue. And it doesn't really have to be, because it, taking away all the arguments and emotions from it, all it really does is basically takes a little bit of power away from the State Board of Education to dictate Common Core requirements down to the school district level. It puts a lot of the power back in the hands of the local school district, the school board, and the school administration. Now, every school district will handle this, and if this passes, every school district is then free to go ahead and tailor either the embracing of Common Core or the adjustment to, and I point out line 7 here, standards to implement educational standards that meet or exceed state minimum educational standards for all grades of the public schools. So now the school districts have the power, and they can go ahead and, like I said, embrace Common Core or work to adjust some kind of tailoring around meeting or exceeding the standards, the assessments that best fits their school district. And I feel very capable, I feel very confident that the work that we've already done in this area is going to put us way ahead of the other school districts. Are there any questions on this one? Because this is really the 10-pound or the 10-ton gorilla sitting in the room.
Andy Schneider?
So, first I have a question. This talks about Common Core standards. It doesn't talk about the assessment. So there's two legs to the stool.
Yeah.
Well, this particular stool has two legs. And there's the Common Core, which helps to adjust the curriculum, and then there's the assessment, which relies upon the aspects of the Common Core have been exposed.
You know, there is somebody in the room that knows a heck of a lot more about this than I do, but I can, and I'm sure she could talk to you for hours about this particular subject. All I want to say is that when it comes to the assessment, the feeling up in Concord right now is that these kids are being assessed to death. Okay, yes, we need assessment. We need something like a Common Core where you have standard assessments, from one state to the next or whatever. But there's also a feeling up there that assessing a child every year, assessing a child even every other year may be too much. And basically this leaves it up to the school district to set their own correct formula for when we should be doing these assessments and what should be in our Common Core curriculum. Andy, I hope that
Well, actually it doesn't.
No?
Because, I'm gonna make a couple of comments.
Okay.
Merrimack is a district, and if you have heard all of our discussion about curriculum over the last year, Common Core has been one of the dimensions that the district has used in creating curriculum that we're using. I think one of the things that this district has used our Common Core for is a level of consistency across what other districts and what other states are doing, but just in that one dimension, because we're still free to be able today to be able to add whatever we want for curriculum.
Right.
We're not bound by Common Core. I mean, it's not as though we've converted everything to Common Core, and what you see in social media, all this stuff, that's certainly not taken the place in Merrimack. But additionally, and what this board is struggling with, not struggling with, but more interested in, is that NECAP is being replaced by the assessment for Common Core. And I always remember, forget the Smarter Balance, thank you.
And
Smarter Balance, past
the
tense.
cost of Smarter
Right,
Balance.
and obviously one of the big differences is that it's as opposed to being a pen and paper sort of a thing or number 2 pencil, it's really computer based, which has its pros and cons, and we've struggled as a board to make sure that we have the right funding in place, the right training in place, and things like that. So, in my mind, this bill doesn't change anything for Merrimack because we already have curriculum that sprinkles Common Core in with things we've been doing for years. But what this doesn't talk about, and it doesn't say it anywhere in this bill, is what you just stated about the assessment and whether the way that the assessment that the state has sort of directed, the number of assessments, how many years, whether it's smarter balanced versus NECAP versus some other methodology, that doesn't get addressed in this bill at all. So it sort of leaves up to the interpretation as to, for Merrimack, this bill would not change a thing as to what we do, I believe. Right, I think that's, all of us that have been sitting behind this table for the last year, look at this bill and say, okay, maybe to some districts it's a big deal for us, but I don't see it for here. So.
Yeah, I agree with you, Andy. This district has, in the words of our superintendent, seamlessly adopted Common Core, and that's to our credit. We're ahead of the curve here. This bill is primarily to give flexibility to those districts that are dragging their feet and haven't come to the point where they've actually either, like I said, embraced Common Core or tailored. It also provides you with flexibility as you go down the road of, what Common Core will evolve to be, or what hidden obstacles will arise during Common Core. It gives you flexibility down the road, and I have a feeling that this bill is going to pass even over probably the objections of the Board of Education, which feels like they're losing a little power. If you read the wording of this, I mean, it's quite, nor shall the board formally or informally adopt a policy or guideline that requires a school district or any public school to implement or participate in the Common Core standards. That basically releases the school district from underneath the power of the State Board of Education. And if you're not reading that into it, then you've missed the point. But it gives you the ability, like this school district, to take the good parts of Common Core, fold them into our school district to make this a better place for the student, or to give us the flexibility to improve on these Common Core standards as we go down the road. We change administrations up at the federal level, Board of Education up at the federal level, whatever. Who knows what can happen in the future? If I knew that, that answer your question. You're not happy.
Yeah, well, no. I mean, it wouldn't change what Merrimack does. So for me, it's like, but if Merrimack is able to do with the way it currently is, you imply that other districts feel handcuffed and not having some of the freedoms that we've done. So I guess I'm confused as to how it would change.
Local
what
control,
other
Andy. Gives power to the local control. And that's really the philosophy going on up at Concord right now in the House.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Are there any other questions from the board regarding this bill?
If I may.
Oh, of course. I'm sorry.
That's fine. Thank you, Mr. Steiner. For the record, I'm Josh Moore, just in case that wasn't known already. So in committee, we had talked quite a bit about this bill. To address your question a little more thoroughly, I guess, I like to leave it up to the school board to make the decisions. Now, people agree or disagree with what the school board does sometimes. As far as this bill is concerned, there were several people who had testified saying that this bill actually, as you said, doesn't really do anything. And if anything, it actually gives power back to the State Board of Education. Because, I don't have the line here, but I believe it's, where's it? That was your thing. Yeah, that's fine. It says the State Board may adopt rules that require any school district implementing the Common Core standards to implement educational standards that meet or exceed the state minimum educational standards for all grades of the public schools. So there are several people who expressed concern that was actually keeping power back to the State Board of Education. Whether or not that's true, that's for obviously you guys and the folks behind me, the constituents, to decide that. But that was the concern. And I'm not doing for or against per se at the moment. I'm just simply saying that that's what was talked about quite a bit during the testimonies. So that was a concern. But you are correct in that this doesn't address the Smarter Balance assessments. And I'll say this as well. This bill I think has good intentions, in my opinion, but we're talking about Common Core. I mean, it's like a half page long. So I don't think it addresses the concerns for the people on either side, really. But as Representative Balcom has said, we're going to go through with this tomorrow. We're going to talk about it and debate it. And obviously, as the chairman has said, if you have any questions or concerns, please let us know, because we're all ears. That's what we're supposed to be here for, right? So.
Okay. Well, I actually did have a couple of comments, and it's not about what we're doing; it's about who we inherit. Mm-hmm. We do, as a district, have kids come in and leave the district throughout the year, over years throughout their education with us, for reasons of their families move, jobs, that kind of thing, and it's what are we going to get from another school district, and what are we going to inherit? What have they learned? How have they learned it? What standards have they been exposed to? So when we look at the Merrimack School District, how we're doing business in our curriculum, you're right, it's not going to impact. It's about the fluctuation of the student body in and out. And it's not a huge percentage of our total student body, but it's impactful to the students themselves. So I see it as an individual problem from my perspective when we don't have uniformity. Obviously, you may or may not know, the Common Core came about from the Defense Department, and Mark has trained me well through our PERC committee, but it came about because military children were going state to state. If you go from South Carolina to Massachusetts, you go from night to day, and you're not ready for a Massachusetts education. So the theory behind Common Core has a lot of value, and whether, it's the basis of curriculum, what you're going to learn that year and what you're going to be exposed to, the standardization of that. So yes, local control has benefits, but it also has consequences because you're going to inherit other districts' curriculum, and you're going to have to fill those gaps on an individual basis. The questions I had of you were, what were the positions that you heard, or any comments you heard from the New Hampshire School Administrators Association and the New Hampshire School Boards Association regarding this bill?
Okay, Madam Chair, would you believe that on the day that we held the public hearing for this bill, we conscripted a double room up at the Legislative Office Building. We set up, 100 chairs, and basically who showed up was Tom Raffio, who's the head of the State Board of Education. It was very much a non-climatic event, and it was over actually very quickly. The school board's administration representative and the school administrators, the state representative for the boards of education, the association that you belong to, and also the
New Hampshire School Boards Association. I'm
right,
actually
on
the board of directors.
The School Boards Association.
So,
and the School Administrators Association both came out in favor of this bill. Okay, this, like I said, it's flexibility, it's local control. Okay, these are two things that seem to be very positive in New Hampshire. I don't want to prolong the discussion anymore, but is there any?
That honestly, for us, that's kind of what our position. What we wanted you to know is, how we're doing business. And when Common Core came to our attention, it's like, what have we been doing? How have we been doing it? What does this mean for us? And the answer is not very much, because we do have a very robust and rigorous academic standard here. So
exactly.
For us, we're not going to be sweating the small stuff. It's going to be about smarter balanced, rolling out a new assessment plan, how that works, how we're measuring our students, and whether they're meeting the standards. And I think at this point, that's a wait and see for us. But it's, as we're talking about, different, we're still having one standard of measurement and one standard of assessment. So how is the individualization of your curriculum going to affect that? So, what's it going to mean to the state statistics on education and learning and capability? So it's going to be an interesting, if this does pass, and it sounds like it will, what it's going to mean, for other districts in the state. As I said, we've all said we're fine.
Yeah. I don't think it'll have any impact on you.
Other than those students we inherit, I don't think it will. So
for the future.
But do we have any other questions on this bill? So I guess we're going to 471 now, Jack.
Okay, thank you very much.
I don't think they're all going to be this intense, I promise. No promises, but I speculate.
Okay. Yeah, I thought that was interesting because that was really supposed to be the main agenda item that everybody was going to be, looking at this year. 471, again, continuing the theme of local control. Again, this erodes some of the power of the State Board of Education. And let's see, I'll have to look at my notes here. Gives the school boards power of assessment and responsibility for teachers' employment guidelines. Okay, so that basically moves the some of the power from the state board down to the local school board level. It was endorsed by 2 members of our own committee, and also Senator Avard from Nashua and Senators Reagan. So it does have both House and Senate. I will have to caution you that a lot of these bills that we're talking about have mirror images over in the Senate bills, especially the one about the Common Core, flexibility for Common Core. There's a Senate bill that has about the same wording. And so when they come together, it's like matter and antimatter. When they come together, there'll be a committee that sits down and comes up with the best solution for whatever bill is passed. Are there any questions on this one? It's pretty straightforward. I caution you that the only thing that changes here are what's the crossouts and the bolded. So for all the writing that's on this page for 471, there's not a heck of a lot that changes. The hearing is this week on Thursday, and it will be exec on March 3rd. So it won't be coming in front of the full House until the middle of March.
And Andy, I believe you raised your hand that you have a question.
So just to be clear, you said that Bill 471 is the only proposal in this bill is to take out the section that's got the strike through?
That's correct. That's the only thing that comes out.
But, okay, but the rest of this is still a proposed bill, right?
The only thing that changes, you have to understand that what we're doing is we're not creating new legislation, we're modifying legislation.
Okay, so what you're doing is taking existing legislation,
right,
and you're just striking out that one line.
Right, but you have to read into that one line. It shall be the duty of school boards and employees of school to comply with the rules and regulations of the state board. That is being taken out. So the opposite of that coin is...
Well, so when I first read this, and I read the meaning of taking the state board out, and then I read what was in here, in some ways it almost swings the needle almost too far in the local control direction, because if you get a school board, I mean, we won't harken back to our own particular example, but if you swing your way back, a school board could choose to create a curriculum and environment in a school district that is different than anywhere else on the planet or in the state or whatever. And what Shannon mentioned earlier about one of the things Common Core tries to do is add some consistency between states and things like that. One of the things that my concern about this bill is that can a district choose of their own behalf to do whatever they want and teach whatever curriculum and not worry about any sort of standardized testing or even any sort of evaluation. I mean, it's if you read it for what it could potentially allow. So
yes, I mean, it certainly opens the door, and it shows you how important a local school board election is. One of the things that's really great is on our board up in Concord, we have the chairman of the Bedford School Board. They're doing terrific things over there, just like we're doing. I mean, Bedford and Merrimack are doing some great things. And Terry Wolf is actually on the board, and she lets us know really what's going on a daily basis at the school board level, which is great. And right now, Superintendent Chaffrey has a direct line to our board. So we oftentimes will reflect things off of her before a hearing. So like I said, Merrimack's well represented up in Concord right now.
Yeah.
But what you say is true. If you got a bad school board.
Well, that's what's really interesting is because, I mean, we're in Merrimack, and you've got Bedford, and you've got all these where people in the town care about education. The board members care about education. We spend a lot of time to do it. There are some places in the state where funding isn't as good, where it's harder times, where trade-offs have to be made, and it's those areas that I would be concerned. I mean, I don't live in those other areas, but if I were at the state level, would that create? I don't know. It's sort of, I don't use the word chaos, but sort of like uncontrolled sort of environment. That's my only.
If I may, to me, with the when you're talking about the State Board of Education versus local boards of education, the way I view education, because I came out of the Merrimack school system 4 years, graduated in 2008, and I view the education really as the free market, and sort of a business aspect where there should be competition. And I think you're dead on as far as giving too much to the local school board. And in actuality, I kind of like that idea, in all honesty, because I don't know that having full-blown standards is entirely the way to go. And I think that this is what we're coming to as far as the bill is concerned. Now, this does actually, well, it doesn't, I don't think it specifically says it, but as far as Common Core is concerned, this gives power, as you said, back to the local control, and which obviously is the theme. But that's what I would like to see. And you are correct in that other school districts may see, I guess if you want to call it lowering standards because of less funding. And that may be a concern, and that's something that they'll have to address for their town, and obviously. But as far as what you're talking about, I think that focusing on Merrimack is fantastic. And because I spoke with a lot of parents before the election, and they had expressed concern about things that were going on, as far as school and their children's education. And so I think that this helps to address that. So.
Okay. Moving on to 581. Okay, 581. I don't know if you've been able to look at it very closely, but this is really a landmark bill, I think. Requiring schools to continue the education of a child during the child's suspension or expulsion. This one probably had more discussion than any of the others that I brought forward to you right now. And the discussion centered around, where do you educate this person that's been suspended? Now, granted, there were only 21 students in the whole state that were suspended or expelled last year, and 5 of those returned to the schooling within the same school year. But what do you do with a kid that has done something so egregious that they're expelled or suspended? Do you want to put them back into your school system? Do you want to send them to a private school to be educated? That may be considered a reward. What's the funding? What's it going to cost you as a school board to go ahead and implement this particular legislation if it passes? And let me tell you, it had a lot of bipartisan support, even going into the committee. We had no less than 6 members of the school board on both sides of the aisle bringing this bill forward. So you might want to think about that. I don't have the answers to it. It's going to be, well, it was heard on 210. Like I said, there was a lot of discussion. It won't be exec until March 5th, and probably won't come before the full House until the Ides of March. So you might want to look that over and think about what your school district would be doing as far as implementing this if it does happen to pass. Right now, we don't have any recommendation on it. Any questions on this one?
And at the other side, no.
I'm sure it's come up in the over the years, Superintendent Chaffrey. This has probably come up before. What do you do? But I don't know how it's been handled. You could help us out by telling us any information that.
Well,
What I would say about expulsion, which really in the state, the way it's set up now, is if you're expelled from school, a public school, then you do not have the opportunity to go to another public school for a full year. So I think that's what creates real angst is a whole year in a student's career is a very long time. So there's this notion, as you point out, about egregious behavior, which caused the expulsion up against making sure that the student is educated. And so what do you do as far as bringing the child back into the public system, or do you try and provide education in another way so they don't get so far behind? It's really a conundrum. As far as suspension, that local districts take care of. It's expulsion that I am really concerned about, because to be expelled, really, you have gone really far afield from normal behavior. And so I agree that the student should be educated. It's just putting the student back in the very system from whence they came has problems as well. And that's why I say that's really an issue.
Yeah, hopefully this won't come up in our school district, but if it does, you know, this you should be aware that this legislation may or may not be in place at the end of this year. Okay, moving on to 610, the last one that I brought up to show you some of the things coming up. I'm going to let Chris Christensen handle this.
Thank you. Background on some of this stuff. When we talk about what's going to work for this town or that town or this school district, that school district, remember that was the thrust of the Claremont decisions 15, 16 years ago. And I think as a state, we're still struggling with that. So when you look at some of these bills and you see, when I look at a bill, one of the first things I look at is, of course, you read the analysis, which doesn't really tell you very much. And then I go back and I look and see who sponsored it. Is there one sponsor? Okay, the bill didn't really have a lot of support. Are there a dozen? Who are they? Are they scattered between parties, between House and Senate? Are they scattered around the state? That type of thing. And sometimes that gives you an idea of where something's coming from. So I did that with this one, which is a very simple bill, but I looked initially at the sponsors and I said, oh, okay, Sue Gottling, I know her, she's on my committee, known her for years, worked on various commissions with her, Representative Woodbury and Senator Daniels. Kind of a geographic spread there. But it turns out that Representative Gottling picked the bill up as a favor to somebody who didn't get reelected last time, who had originally filed the bill and didn't get reelected. So she's not really in the mix from a geographic standpoint, but we still have, in newspaper language, somebody on the far left and somebody on the far right, or at least right and left, co-sponsoring the bill. So it comes out that way. But for the people listening at home who don't have the bill in front of them, this is going to require school boards to vote to approve reassignment of students from one school to another. And the thrust of it really seems to be reassigning a student from one school district to another. And apparently what's been happening is, as you know, right now school superintendents have the authority to do the reassignments. And so frequently if there's a crossover between towns or whatever, or there's a short period where somebody moves and the student wants to stay in the old school, whatever, they kind of waive the tuition. And apparently what's been happening is in some parts of the state, the school board has not found out about this until after they got into the budget session and said, oh, we're not getting money for this student, but we're paying for his education or her education. And so it kind of came as a surprise to the respective school boards. So the intent of this really is just to take the surprise out of things. And that to me says maybe this isn't going to go very far, because the school board in this case or the superintendent, they're not working well together as they should be. And that, to me, we've heard this before, that's a local issue. So that's the thrust of this one, is I think you're really trying to get school boards and superintendents in some instances to work better together, where in some instances apparently they haven't been. And that's the other end of what I talked about earlier, is their geographic spread on who's sponsoring a bill. And if it's a very localized kind of thing, there's no appeal to the rest of the state, it's very difficult to get a bill through without that broader appeal, or at least several people supporting it geographically. So that's the end of that one. But I think if there are questions, I did want to mention one other thing. Procedurally, Jack mentioned several times that we're going to exec this bill, and this is as much for the people at home as it is for you. I think most of you heard this, but an executive session on a bill is not a non-public session. It is a session where, after the public hearing, the committee discusses, and that's the opportunity for committee members to voice their opinion. So when you have a public hearing, the committee members, for the most part, ask questions to clarify testimony, but they don't state their own opinion. They hold their opinion for the executive session and present it to the committee at that point. Then they have a vote, and then the vote of the executive session is what goes into the House calendar and goes to the House floor. And I think with that, we are done, unless you have other questions.
Do you have any questions on 610? So, and Jack?
Could I just say one? It's very important, and that's for the people at home and also the people present. We do read every email that you send us on these bills. So please, give us your opinion, give us your feedback. It helps.
And one thing that you had mentioned earlier, Jack, and I just want to stress that, is there's been an open line of communication with you and our superintendent, and we appreciate that extension of communication and letting us know what's coming up, and picking the brain of the person who runs our district day to day, and what your votes do to impact our day-to-day operations and impact our students. So keep that dialogue going. We appreciate you coming to us as well to let us know what's going on in Concord. As a governing body, it means a lot for us to be able to direct our superintendent to where we feel the district operation needs to go, and the collaboration is essential for a strong district going forward. So we appreciate you coming. I know it's been a couple of years, but for those of you who don't know, this is the first time in a very long time that we've had state reps that are on the education department, and we get two. And one is the vice chair, and who happened to be a former Merrimack School Board member. So we really have a ringer up there, I would say, and someone who has a really good and open dialogue with our superintendent. So regarding Merrimack, we are in a good place, and we thank you for putting yourself out there and getting elected to this committee.
Thank you for those very kind words.
So, before we lose our delegation to the night, does anyone have any questions of our three delegates? Andy?
I'd just like to say, I asked some probing questions on the bills, but overall, I mean, I certainly believe that it's a balance that we all have to do between some sort of a consistency as well as local control. And I think being on the school board for Merrimack for about 3 years now, I see that we balance that every day. We don't take something and just in writing and do it. We try to do the right thing for the community and stuff. And if that's something that these bills can bring to the rest of the state, whether they knew they had it or not, I guess that's a good thing.
So thank you again. And Chris, I will see you on Wednesday.
That's the plan.
So Parks and Rec. So we serve together on that. So thank you very much, and welcome back anytime. And now, I'm sorry I teased you guys earlier. Item number 7, I mean it this time, technology in the classroom. And the topic tonight is coding. We are going to invite to the table Nancy Rose, who is our Director of Technology and Library Services, Jacqueline Moore, Sharon Silva, and Adam Goodman, and some very, very special guests who will be introduced. Thank you all for coming and for your patience. Mark, did you want to introduce tonight's topic for us, please?
Happy to do it. So periodically, as you know, we try to provide the board with some information about the programming that our teachers engage in with our students. And the issue of technology is one that that we talk a lot about at the board's table. And we thought it would be really interesting tonight for you to see just a slice of the actual work that our teachers do. We're lucky, you know, we always talk about how lucky we are with our teachers. Merrimack is second to none for the dedication of its teachers to the work of students. And the group in front of you and all those who are not here who do the same work really been doing outstanding work with students when it comes to integrating technology in the classroom, to use technology as a vehicle to inquire, to ask why, to think about big picture things. And so tonight we're really delighted to have our teachers here and our students, and we're so grateful for their patience to be able to just talk a little bit about what they've been doing.
Well, I will be very brief. I just wanted to introduce the teaching staff that are here, and the reason that when Mark approached me about doing this, that I selected who we have here is Sharon Silva is the librarian at the Upper Elementary School, and she does a lot of instruction on coding. Adam Goodman is the technology educator at the Upper Elementary, who also does a lot, and they collaborate and work with each other. And then we have Jackie Moore, who is our new technology educator at the Master Call Elementary School. And from the K-4 level, as they do their work, they're collaborating with the Upper Elementary to make sure that they've built a progression in, so that as the students are learning and moving forward in the years, they're building on their skills. The other thing I think is so exciting is having observed some of the classrooms that are doing this. I mentioned at my budget hearing the first graders that were learning algorithms at Reed's Ferry. I was in one of Sharon's classes watching the students there who were doing problem solving. They were working collaboratively. They were showing Mrs. Silva how to solve problems. It was just really very incredible to see. And the thing I think that I've noticed most across the board is that the engagement is incredibly high. The kids seem to love it, and some of the exercises are on paper and they don't care. They're problem solving, they're doing logic, they're arriving at answers, and then they can see how that plays out. So I just wanted to let them showcase, and I think this will be fun.
Thanks. All right, so the first thing we're going to talk about is code.org and an hour of code. It started in 2013, and during Computer Science Week, I think every elementary school in Merrimack, we all participated in an hour of code. And I'm going to play a quick little clip. It's very, very quick.
Here we are, 2013. We all depend on technology to communicate, to bank, and none of us know how to read and write code.
The first program I wrote asked things like, what's your favorite color? Or how old are you?
I wrote a program to play tic-tac-toe.
I first learned how to make a green circle and a red square appear on the screen.
You're just trying to make something, trying to transfer something from your mind to the computer or to a tablet. It's an experience.
The whole limit in the system is just that there just aren't enough people who are trained and have these skills today.
The programmers of tomorrow are the wizards of the future. You know, you're going to look like you have magic powers compared to everybody else.
Great coders are today's rock stars. That's it.
So that was just a little snippet of why it's so important for our students to understand coding and understand programming. And code.org it's really all about STEM, science, technology, education, and math, and really exciting and engaging our students. And it's a nonprofit group, and it's sponsored by some of the biggies in the field, Microsoft, Apple, Dropbox, and so on and so forth. And this past fall, a team of us teachers went off to a code.org training session, which was really enlightening, and I think Adam will talk about it a little bit more. I also wanted to, I am not going to, can you reach that? Thanks. I'm not going to show you this video clip, but you may have heard of Mitch Resnick, who is a computer scientist, and he directs the MIT Learning Project, which is Scratch, which is another way of coding for kids and inspiring kids to code. And Mitch Resnick, in this TED Talk that he did, he talks about the net generation. We've all heard that term, the net generation. And he talks about how, yes, they're users, but do they really know how to create? And he sort of did an analogy of learning to read. You also need to learn how to write. And he's a really, really strong advocate about fluency in technology. This is just a little sample of code, how I learned code. It's pretty mind-boggling. And we're just not going to go any further on that.
This is for tomorrow.
But this is a sample of coding, how our students are learning it through Scratch, and we're going to be showing you a few other examples, and some of our students at JMUS will be talking about Scratch. This is actually some of their codes. And with that, we're going to turn this on to, well, first we're going to do Adam.
Oh, okay.
So.
Adam can turn his. Is your microphone on, Ed? Did you want to come up? No. Okay. Just tell me what you want me to do.
Thank you, Sharon, and thank you, board, obviously, for having us here tonight. I just want to say that last year, when we introduced the Hour of Code at JMUS, it was a huge success, and I was so impressed with how the kids just jumped in and weren't afraid to try all these new things that were a little scary to some of us. Basically, that inspired me to start thinking, how can I get more coding into the curriculum? How can we do more of this? You know, it's going away from PowerPoint and Microsoft Word. And so in the fall at JMUS, staff was introduced to a new initiative called CIA, which stands for Curriculum Integrated Activities. And teachers had the opportunity to come up with an activity that they would share with kids. Had to be curriculum-based, but really any topic was a go. Well, we had a bit of a meeting of the minds between Sharon, myself, our new Gateway teacher, Meg Fowler, as well as our tech integrator, Helen Fitzgerald. And we said, you know what, this is a great opportunity to get in on the ground floor and get some coding in here. So we had a long list. It was super confusing and overwhelming, and we had a lot of options, a lot of websites, a lot of programs. And after a little research and some deep breaths, we decided to use the website Scratch, which is put up by MIT. And it's a great site for all ages to teach the intros, of computer science. Also in the fall, and let me just talk about the fact that these students here with me tonight, Grace and Ryan, were two of the first members of our CIA group. They were with me for the first session, and I was just overly impressed at how these kids and the others, it was honestly scary at the beginning because I certainly don't consider myself an expert in the area, and I quickly found that we were doing this together. It had nothing to do with what I knew. It was about us working through the successes and failures, and I think these guys would agree it was fun, and I loved getting excited right along with them. In the fall, a lot of the elementary teachers had the opportunity to take a workshop with Code.org, and they introduced their new courses that they were developing that teach computer science. And so all the elementary teachers decided that after the new year, we were going to just jump in and at least spend some time with the new courses. And at JMUS, for the past 7 weeks, we've been working on Course 2. It's been a great mix of offline activities, as Nancy alluded to, just activities within the classroom. We didn't even turn the computers on. And then other activities where we did use the computers, and the kids worked through challenging puzzles, and they had to persevere, and it was a lot of fun. And again, I was so impressed with how much these kids just jumped in. And if you look up there, those 5 key things, they happened. There was creativity, and the kids worked together to collaborate, and they had to communicate. They had to figure out ways to get someone else to follow a program. They had to be persistent. They had to problem solve. And so these two kids right here were great examples of all of those things happening at once. So, I'd like to introduce you to Grace and Ryan, who are 5th grade students. And like I said, they've done a lot of work together. They've collaborated together, and they're going to share just a little bit about some of their experiences with coding, starting with Grace.
Does Grace need my chair? Does she need to be at the computer?
We're going to transfer after. They're going to do this first.
Okay.
Hello, my name is Grace. Before I learned how to code, I would play games and not realize that you had to code the game to make everything move and make high scores. I really enjoyed coding because when I first made a shape by coding, I realized how easy it was to code. I liked the challenge of creating a new game.
Hi, I'm Ryan. I am in Grace's class, and we went to the library, and together we did coding and collaborated with each other. We worked on cool shapes, and if it didn't turn out the way we wanted it to be, we would fix it.
Thank you. Now, as they head over that way, Grace is going to share with you, because not only did the kids do some great stuff at school, but some of them actually went home, got accounts, separate accounts, and did some stuff at home. So Grace and Ryan are going to share with you on the computer Grace's account with Scratch, and they're going to show you one of the things that they worked on together.
Oh no, that's bad. So we actually have 2, and is what we do, we'd press the space bar, and it would put the pen down, and then it would set the pen color to green. It would repeat this 50 times. You'd move 120 steps and then turn 243 degrees, and we've got this. And then we wanted to make it a little bit bigger, so we move them down here, and then slide this to the right. And we changed it to the left arrow, changed it to purple, and increased it. And then you press this. Makes multiples.
Well, thank you, guys. And now I'd like to hand it over to Jackie, who's my counterpart over at MES.
So thank you, Adam. So again, my name is Jackie Moore, and I am the ETI at Master Goal Elementary School. So I also participated this year with the all grades, 1st through 4th, and they did the Computer Science Education Week. So I do have some pictures that'll probably come up. So that was done for December 8th through the 14th of this 2014 year. Grades 2 through 4 participated on code.org. Which is what we'll talk about, what we've been talking about recently. And the 1st grade participated through a website called Tinker because it was a little bit more fundamental for them, and they could actually get through the entire course through the 45-minute course. And actually 27 1st graders completed their hour of code through Tinker, which was just done in that 45-minute period. And we actually had 82 students total complete it during that Computer Science Education Week, and 8 of our staff members, including Mrs. Carter, she completed that as well. So then during the month of January, we took it as an entire month of code.org, and it was done for the first week. It was completely unplugged, so that means that all of the students, they did not touch the computer for the entire week. I was very apprehensive going in as they would come to computer class, and we weren't actually in the computer lab, but they actually really loved it and enjoyed it. And so all of these learning opportunities were done through the curriculum that code.org has based, and it's a K through 5 curriculum. And they've done all of that by integrating all the standards for computer science education, Common Core, math, language arts, and science. And also through our ITSD standards, which is International Society, thank you, Technology. And what I had is that grades 1 and 2 completed course 1, which was developmentally founded for beginners for coding and young readers. And our grades 3 and 4 did course 2, and we had stopped that at a certain point for our 4th graders so that when they move on to the upper elementary school next year, Adam can pick right on up where they left off and kind of do a little bit of a refresher, but keep going through course 2, because there is course 3 that they will eventually get on. And so if you want to go to the next slide, I do have here with me 2 of my students. I have Jamie, our 4th grader, and Jensen, the 3rd grader. So this is our first one for Jamie. So I'm going to pass on over to her.
My name is Jamie Pillsbury. I like code.org because it was very fun and I got to do all the challenges and I got to figure it out. I found the artist to be challenging because on one of the levels you had to figure out the degrees and that was very hard for me. I will keep coding because it is very fun to do and I just like doing it.
Yep. So the 2 screenshots up on the board are, so the first one is the artist, so that is talking a lot about the degrees and the angles. So the one next to it with the code and the blocky, that is the solution of how to solve it. So the biggest difficulty for a lot of the students was figuring out they could draw a square, but to finish this kite, the first step to turn those left of 45 degrees, it was to figuring that out, and it was a lot of done by trial and error. So it was giving them, okay, well, what are the 8 blocks you need to form the square, but now what do you have to do now and to turn it? And then Jamie had mentioned to me that one of her favorite ones was the maze zombie level, and this one has a lot of the repeat block, so the zombie has to move and repeat so many times in order to get to the flower. And so then our next slide, we have Jensen.
Hi, I'm Jensen. I like code.org because, well, it's just fun. I found code to be challenging because same thing, artist loops, it's just like, I don't know, it's just really hard.
Yeah, so if we play this clip, this was actually taken a screenshot today from, this was Jensen trying to solve this problem today, and this one's the one they found the most challenging. So. So what Jensen's doing right now is he's trying to figure out how many times that needs to repeat in order to draw the star shape. So it wasn't correct, so then Jensen went back and he didn't give up and tried a different number. Still wrong, but we kept going. We persevered, as a lot of us did at Upper Elementary. One last time. And we did it. And we'll do the last one.
I will keep coding because it's just fun.
Yeah. So one of the things that Jensen also talked about being one of his favorite parts was the Flappy code. So that's where the game Flappy Bird, you actually get to program and create how Flappy Bird's going to work on your own. So it is like the traditional app that a lot of students found on their iPhone or their iPad or iPod. So they got to actually program that. And so a couple of our 4th graders, they found that loophole that if I just hit this one little code, it'll just play by itself and I'll never die and I'll get 1,000 points. So they find that very fun and interesting. So.
Well, before we wrap up, Sharon wanted to leave time for questions, but I wanted to just say as a nod to the teaching staff at the K-12 level, when the Hour of Code came to my attention last year, I sent a note out and said, wouldn't this be something to try? And that was as much as I had to do. So I don't want to diminish my role. However, they took it, they taught themselves, they took it to their classes, they tried it at 1st grade, they did it in 11th grade, and the responses were all very positive. The high school kids found it challenging, and they were doing the same thing that some of the elementary kids were doing. And then when the opportunity for the workshops came up with the courses, I just sent out, here's a thing. It was free. It was on Saturday. I think everybody went except somebody who had a family emergency. And so the response from the teaching staff has been just incredible, and you can just see the level of engagement with the teachers, with the administrative staff in the buildings. I know some support staff have done the Hour of Code, and so everybody's involved, and I think that's really great for the kids to see that level of engagement across the board too, because it's new for everybody. And they're all learning problem solving and critical thinking, and they're all learning this at the same time, and that's a very empowering thing. So with that, I just, if you have any final words, but.
I don't think so. Anybody else? No, we were just.
Oh, I also just want to say that I was at the table one day when those two were working, and I just felt like I was in the presence of glory. So I wasn't there, but I'm sure it was great.
So, any questions?
Anything from the board? Cinda, then Davis.
Yeah, a couple things. First of all, I just want to congratulate Grace and Ryan, Jamie, and Jensen for a job well done and for really standing out. Also, I want to thank you for your patience. It's starting to get late, and unfortunately, I don't think we have much of a chance of a snow day tomorrow. Although I think maybe if you're like my kids at home, they're kind of used to like these later hours from because of that. But in all seriousness, we've been hearing about this happening for a long time, and I just get very, very excited to really see what you guys are working on, to see, I mean, the problem-solving skills, being able to check your results, going back. I mean, it's programmers do that when they're, you know, there's bugs, they have to go back and refix it. So it's very much, you know, what happens, as well as just identifying patterns, which I think is just, you know, critical, again, life skills that you can apply across the board. So, and to the educators working, this is really great, and I thank you for all your time and the work that you're doing with our kids. But I do have a question for anybody that wants to answer the question for me. I know in the little video, one of the questions that was asked is, do you remember one of the first things that you ever coded? So I just wondered if anyone had any insights for me as to the first thing you ever remember coding. And it can be educators, children. I think I did something years ago that was like a tree, like, you know, very pixelated kind of a tree, Christmas tree, I think it was. So that's what's coming from my memory. So I just wanted to see if anyone else could answer that question for me.
Sure, do you? Well, I didn't have anything cutesy, but I was working, I was in accounting before I became an educator, and I had to program reports, and I didn't realize I was coding until later on. That was the kind of thing I was showing you.
Yeah.
I didn't get to do the stuff you guys get to do.
I coded on a computer that recorded our data to cassette tapes.
So, Davis? Oh, I'm sorry, and then Andy after that? Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. What did you guys have? Sorry, I would love it.
Ryan and I, in our CIA group, our first challenge was to make a snowflake. And
Awesome.
That's when I was there.
They started it all then.
That was one of my first challenges too, making snowflakes.
No one wants to make snowflakes right now, right? Okay, just checking. No more snowflakes. Makes sense. Exactly.
Palm trees.
Any questions on that side table? Any ideas? No?
I mean, for me, mine was more, it wasn't this, it was more of coding in HTML format for like layouts for Zanga and MySpace and Facebook and things like that. So
And that was your first coding, huh?
That was mine,
okay.
yeah.
Mine was Pascal in the 80s, and I tried to block that out because I wasn't very good at it. So went into marketing for a reason. And I think, Davis, you were next?
Well, mine was back in BASIC, where I thought I was really doing a lot when I had like 100 lines of code and could make it put a big X on the screen. I wanted to echo Cinda's thoughts of congratulations to all of you. Nancy for giving the idea out there, putting it out there, and all the educators, especially you three, for picking it up and running with it. I think that is what Merrimack is all about. As I was alluding to with the representatives when they were here, Merrimack's always on the leading edge, I think, and I applaud you guys for taking the initiative. I applaud the students for running with it as quickly as you did. And if you want to make any extra money, I want to be tutored in how to do this. So you can find my phone number on the back of the agenda. Please feel free to send me a phone call or an email. And this is fascinating, and I'm really impressed, and I can't wait to see what you guys do next. So please, feel free to share it with us anytime. Thank you.
So I'll also add, I don't think you guys and even the teachers know what you're putting into kids' hands. I've been in the computer industry for 36 years this year, and the first time I coded was as a junior in college because there weren't computers. To show you, ever heard of punch cards? You ever hear of punch cards? Okay, imagine, so you sit at a computer and you type, or you push a mouse and you do something. Imagine that if every time you typed a line, you sat and you typed, and then what you got was a card that had things punched into it, that you then had to put into a machine to read for one line. And if you typed it wrong, you had to retype the whole card all over again. So you talk about cassette tapes, there were things like paper tapes, cards, things like that. I mean, just archaic. But the thing to keep in mind is that you can take this as far as you want to go for fun, for work, and things that, like you said, you were in accounting and you didn't know you were programming at the time. Well, virtually everything these days is involved in programming, even though you don't call it that. So it's really important that you have fun with it, but also think of what the application is that you can do, because I've been able to do, I don't do programming. I wasn't that good at it, but there's a lot of other things to do that are surrounding programming. So, and you asked what the first thing that you programmed? I actually programmed a game of tic-tac-toe. And the funny part is you can, when you do coding like that, you can make the game always win or never win. So that's the fun part. You talked about doing Flappy Birds and doing the secret code to be able to have something, be able to have infinite number of lives. Well, just imagine the guy that did Super Mario Brothers that put that one trapped door in that nobody found for 30 years. And now somebody has found it and get the end of Mario in, what was the record, like 18 minutes? They can get to the end of the game just by going through the trap doors. So just think of that, trap doors. It's good.
May I add to that just a spot?
Sure.
Just to, as educators, one of the things that we do is prepare students for jobs that we don't know what they might be. When I was their age, there was no such thing as a 3D printer. And now, the things that we're hearing about 3D printers and medical scientists and researchers creating parts to cure children. So this is just a stepping stone to what we're hoping some jobs that our students are going to do that we don't even know.
So we're hoping you can do it for us. Honestly, I walked with the dinosaurs of DOS as well, so it's a step past the punch cards, but not quite as cool as what you're playing with. So Pascal was a very frustrating thing, like what Mrs. Silva showed earlier, but with a black screen. It was like Star Wars looking, but with the old graphics. But definitely, there's so much more you guys can learn, and it's infinite, the resources that are out there. So just keep your zeal for learning. And you looked horrified, Ryan, when he talked about punch cards. Like you were scared of them. I'll be honest with you. I don't blame you. I'm terrified thinking about it. A typo and we're done. We have spell check now. It's a different world.
Find out how many of your teachers know how to use slide rules.
Oh, yeah.
So, but you know what? When the people come to us, especially, we have your teachers and your principals come to us all year. But it's when the students come and they talk about their zeal for learning and how much they really enjoy some of the new things we're bringing into the classroom. That keeps us energized up here to bring the resources to you and get you the best people to find the best tools for you, like we did this year with the code.org and the Scratch programming and the Tinker programming as well. So the more resources that are out there that we can get our hands on, we're very excited to bring it to the classroom for you and support the people that are looking to find it. So keep up the great work. Just always be excited to learn. I mean, you guys are really brave coming out here and telling us what you have learned so far. That's we could be kind of nerve-wracking. But you guys did a wonderful job talking to us about what you've learned. And we just hope you have a great rest of your school year. and learn so much more and look to see what you do in the future. So I still have 16 more weeks of JMUs with you, Mr. Goodman. So you know where to find me if you have any issues. But and I expect a mean hot dog grilled later this year for the spring. So he does the music concert outside at the end of the year. So he is a hot dog guy. But I do look forward to all your presentations, and thank you so much for coming out. Were there any other questions from the board or administration? Matt, absolutely.
Yeah, I just want to commend the educators here for taking this on, and I just have a question for you. I mean, when you talk coding initially and you have young children, it seems like a massive kind of concept to get across to them because of their age and the way they inhale information and absorb it at a rapid rate. Did you find it easier with a younger age group than if you would have started this at like middle school or something like that?
I mean, for me, with some of my first graders, this was their very first experience, because especially for a first grade, this is their first experience in the technology as a special. And so I've had some of the kids, some of them, it's a little bit struggling at first because it's to understand that they snap together like a puzzle piece. So as you kind of heard this, the sounds from when Jensen, they snap together, so they have to listen for that. But I've even had some first graders, there was a puzzle with a sequence of a bee having to program the bee to move and collect nectar and then to make honey. And it was the first time a puzzle had came up where there was actually 2 flowers instead of 1 and 2 make honeys. And there's a small, very tiny little number 2. And so one of the students goes through and he's like, but I did it and it was right. And I said, well, reset it. Let's look at it again. And it just said, look at that little number 2. And then he goes, oh, easy peasy lemon squeezy, Miss Moore. A first grader just goes, fixes it, and he's done. And I'm like, okay, I'm good. So they love it. I would have people I do PM bus duty, and some of the kids would come in like after the week of code for the hour of code. They would be like, so we're really doing it for a whole month, like the whole month. And I'm like, yes, the whole month. So they got really excited about it. So it's very rewarding, especially with 17 first graders. And at one point, I kind of felt like they've got it. I could probably just they can help each other. Like I'm just sit back. I'm just facilitating, and they've totally got it under control. So it was very rewarding.
Nice.
It's like someone said on the board here that you're really training people for jobs that we don't even know exist right now. And that's the most exciting part of this whole thing. And I just want to say thank you.
Just following on that too, Matt, one of the things, the TED Talks that I shared this summer, one of them was the one that Sharon mentioned with Mitch Resnick, but there's another one by Alan Key where he talks about how they learned variables when they were doing the logo turtle. And the idea of a variable when you're in first or second grade, when you're doing it in a very visual way and you can immediately see the impact of changing a variable, is very different than if the first time you encounter a variable is when you're in 8th grade doing algebra and doing variables that are x's, and they sit there on the page and they don't change. So they're getting these concepts that are used in math and science, variables, algorithms, that they understand what they should do. So they have an expectation so that when they come across this in the subject areas and their other curricular areas later, they kind of have a sense of where this is going, rather than this being a novel concept. So as they come up, all of these things that they've seen in action get applied. And I think that's what is one of the more powerful things. Watching the first graders up at Reed's Ferry dissect the word algorithm and what it meant, and then to go and exercise it, was just really quite something. I wouldn't have thought of that as first grade material. And they tackled it, they got it, they knew what an algorithm was supposed to do. Can they do the math behind it? Maybe not for a few years, but they know what it should do. And I think that's one of the more empowering things about this. They're going to have a lot more context as they go forward. So,
Mark?
And just, there's so much that can be said tonight. We'd be here all night. But I would just say, too, thanks to the educators and certainly the students. But one of the things that I think we've learned, too, is the fact that learning can be a joint exercise. It doesn't have to be experts in one side of the room and novices on the other side of the room. We can all be experts and all be learners at the same time and build a culture of helping one another. And those are really skills that transcend a particular content area. That's just how learning happens. And I think that what you saw tonight is a demonstration of that. If somebody has a way to do something, whether you're a student or a teacher, you share it, and that propels learning. And so one of the takeaways for me is the culture of just learning that this is building that transcends technology, that goes to all the content areas, and has profound effect on the way that students and teachers just approach problems and learning opportunities. So there are many things that can be said about it. That's just another piece, but I think we've learned that exponentially as time has gone on, is just how true that is. So it's a great added benefit.
Thank you, Mark. And Davis, you had your hand up.
I did. I neglected to thank one important group, the parents. Again, we apologize for keeping you so late. And I assure you, if Mrs. McGill or Mrs. Carter give you any hassle tomorrow because the kids are running late, just let us know. We'll sign you a hall pass. But we really appreciate you sharing your children with us and allowing us to celebrate in their success. You all should be very proud. They're doing great things. So thank you very much for sharing them tonight.
And thank you all again. And have a great tomorrow. Have a great Tuesday, guys. No snow, please, no snow. Thanks.
Thank you.
And now we're on to item number 8, which is warrant presentations for the deliberative session. The deliberative session is scheduled for March 4th, 2015. It'll be held at 7 o'clock at the James Mastrocola Upper Elementary School All-Purpose Room. And in your packets, you received a schedule of the articles. Of course, Article 1 is the election of members of the school board, so that will be taken care of without us. Number 2 is gifts and property. I have some suggestions about how we could possibly do this, how we could assign this out so everyone gets to present an article and get a couple seconds in 1 or 2 seconds in as well. So for gifts and property, Cinda, would you mind taking that? And Davis, would you mind doing the second on that? The MESA contract, I would like to keep with Andy and I because we did the negotiating, so we can present it probably the best. So I would like to move the MESA contract and have Andy second. And that being said, there's a trailer. Obviously, Article 4 has to do with if we have to have if Article 3 is defeated, the school board to call one special meeting. And Andy, if you wouldn't mind moving that, and I will second that for you. The fifth one is about the asbestos removal fund. And Davis, would you mind moving that? And I'll have Cinda second. And then the school district repair capital reserve fund. I was going to ask Chris if he could move that and talk about how we've used that fund in the past and appropriate levels of funding as well. To get a better understanding for the community, and I'd be glad to second that. Number 7 is the school district operating budget, and that's always been done by the budget committee. Are we good with that schedule for deliberative session night? Okay. Excellent. I don't think we need a motion, so we are good on that. Which moves us to number 9, which is other. First is correspondence. Is there any correspondence to come before the board? Cinda?
I know we had a couple of pieces of correspondence that came to the entire board.
Right, and I have a list of those,
mention those. But I did receive a phone call from a parent just expressing some concern over communication protocols. But other than that, that's it.
Any other communication? Andy?
I received an email from a parent about some of the budget conversations that we had.
Any others that came before the board? I have a few that went to the entire school board. And first was a parent who emailed us asking us to consider canceling February vacation so as not to extend the school year. We also got a second email, which was concerns from a parent regarding the school lunch program and addressing students with food allergies, specifically gluten allergies for this parent. And third came this evening from the elected members of the Planning and Building Committee. The Planning and Building Committee is made up of 6 members plus a school board representative, and the 6 members sent a letter to us basically expressing their disappointment of not having the SAU SPED office on this year's warrant article for voting. So other than that, I think that covers correspondence. Any comments from the board? I have one because I was remiss. At the beginning of the meeting, I failed to mention that Chair Ortega is not here tonight. He had a little shoulder surgery. He is recuperating. We wish him a speedy recovery and hope he feels much better very soon. And Student Representative Crowley is also excused. Number 10, any new business to come before the board? I had one, honestly, based on the correspondence from the parent regarding February vacation. We've had a lot of snow days and a lot of large storms. I'd like us to discuss basically where our school calendar is and basically where we're looking at for the last day of school and what would be the option of asking the Board of Education to consider instructional hours. What would we have to do that, and would that be something we should consider, and at what point we should really feel the alarm and consider it?
Do you want me to address it now?
Well, if you can.
What I tell you is that right now we are scheduled to have the last day on Monday the 22nd. However, all superintendents have been given the opportunity to write to the commissioner and ask to have one day excused, which was the day the governor declared an emergency day. Do you remember one of the snow days was that we were all to be off the roads? I have learned over 14 years that you do not write that until you see how everything plays itself out. So I will probably wait until mid-March before I make a move. If that is true, if I can write to the commissioner, the commissioner, and ask to have that day waived, then in fact the last day of school would be the 19th of June. So I don't feel that there's a need to do anything other than what is planned right now. And I think we just need to be patient and take a wait-and-see approach. But that is the move that I would make, and that would put us back at the 19th.
Absolutely. So for the spirit of new business, can we take a review mid-March and see where we're at and just have just a quick review on our agenda? I think we'll have a couple more storms. I hate to tell you guys, but we'll have a couple more storms.
Yes, and I think what I am going to bring before you on March 2nd is the school calendar for 2015-16. So perhaps we can get that underway, and then as the month unfolds, I'll come back to you.
That would be ideal. Thank you. Item number 11 is committee reports. Does anyone have committee reports? I'll just start at the end of the table. So Cinda, then Andy.
Sure. The Budget Committee met last week as well as had the public hearing. The committee had moved the budget as we presented it to them onto the deliberative session. So there were no proposed increases or decreases to the budget.
Thank you. Andy?
So on February 5th was the Merrimack Safeguard. I was not able to attend at the last minute, but what they did do during that particular meeting was look at the different action items for each of the focus areas, so like business and community and things like that. So at the next meeting, I'll report back with some of the ideas and some of the action items that the Merrimack Safeguard did. Today was a meeting of the District Wellness Committee where they talked about an internal tool they're building for the different instructors on how to get the district-wide wellness calendar for staff. So they're building something that Mark Merrifield has put together that they're looking at. They're looking at potentially having a guest speaker. Earlier this year there was an anxiety workshop that was held. They're looking at, through the Wellness Committee, having a guest speaker, and the current topic they're thinking about is around Lyme disease, some education around that. So that they'll be doing more. They'll be reaching out to you, the superintendent, about that idea. And also the interesting part is they talked a little bit about standardization of when you go outside and when you don't during recess, and what the policy is at the district and things like that. So there was a lot of lack of knowledge about what the process was and what the guidelines and the rules are. One of the interesting things they talked about potentially how to use some of the money that came from that one the what we talked health trust. Thank you. I ran a blank. And they were talking about how they could use that as part of wellness, as part of the district. And one of the suggestions was maybe each of the playgrounds needs to have a weather station to be able to say what the outside temperature and wind chill is to find out whether it's acceptable to go out for recess or not. We were brainstorming some of those ideas. So that's sort of the way it went today. But that was District Wellness Committee.
And I don't have an official committee report. I'm just going to give a plug for one of my committees, and that is Parks and Rec. We are meeting Wednesday, but the Winter Carnival is going to be at the end of the month, the 28th, at Wasserman Park. There will be some great new exciting activities. They are going to have snow this year. I don't think, if it turned 80 degrees tomorrow, I think there'd still be something left. But some new activities, check out the Parks and Recreation link off of the website, which is merrimacknh.gov. There's a link off Parks and Rec. They actually have their own site now. I just don't want to misspeak it. But they have basically what's going on in that department, and there's a lot going on. But it'll give you a rundown of the Winter Carnival. I believe it's starting at noon this year. So that will be a great event. And there's a cardboard sled contest. So they'll be sledding in cardboard sleds that they have to build themselves. And there'll be definitely style point type contests as well as speed and all that good stuff. So for individual and multiple sled teams. So something to consider and enjoy. It's a great family event on the 28th at Wasserman Park. Moving on, public comments on agenda item. This is your opportunity to come and talk to us about what transpired tonight and any feedback you may have. Are there any public comments on agenda items? I put a lot of pressure on you, but seeing none, there's one person. We will close public comments on agenda items. We'll move to item 13. We'll sign the manifest, and I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Made by Andy Schneider and seconded by Cinda Gualiumi. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, abstains. It carries 4-0-0. Thank you and good night.